Alright, everyone, welcome to the Rochford Files with your host, Andrew Rochford, coming to you live from the Denver area. It's been uh, quite the weekend seeing what has unfolded with this eviction moratorium. And that's pretty much all I'm going to talk about on today's show. I I thought about working in a couple other topics, but to be honest, those just didn't feel uh, right to include into today's show. So everything will just have a singular focus on this eviction moratorium that Democrats have let lapse and other stuff that ties into it. As you'll see with everything I got set up for today's show, because for me, I try to keep it as focused as much as I can on serious issues. And even though my channel has not had the growth that I would like to see in these nearly 3 months since I've started, I try not to go the cheap route for extra views. And it's definitely very tempting to go the route of the easy, cheap clicks, which is pretty much, for example, reaction videos to what other top left YouTubers say. But I also know that when I do it, I can tie it into some serious stuff. But I feel like I can't. But even when I do that, it does feel cheap at times, even though I can take some unserious topics at face value and lead it into some serious commentary. However, that's not the route I'm going to go today. I think the focus needs to be on what's happened over the weekend with the Democrats letting the eviction moratorium expire and what they could do with this right now. So let's start off with what led everything, the moment that got the ball rolling in motion. So for people like me who are pretty glued into what goes on, I knew for months that this day would come. I mean, I think this was supposed to expire at the end of June, but Democrats added an extra month extension, and now they're in this situation where they conveniently set up a 7-week recess right when shit was about to crumble. So I think this little tweet thread from Heather Cagle pretty much sums up well what went down as squad members Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Cori Bush tried to push at the last second to force a vote for another extension. Update: Democrats going to try to UC Eviction Moratorium extension. It will likely fail. This was the compromise they reached after Representative Maxine Waters refused to relent. Democratic leadership. Oh, hello, whole lot of PTSD, and thank you for the follow. Oh, sure, you could do that. In self-defense, a knife protects. I bring my lunch, no one suspects, and when it's time to end a life, deceptive fruit knife. Interesting. This comes after multi-hour meeting in which Waters and Democratic leadership called holdouts one by one to see if they could change their kind. This is unacceptable. How do we tell people I can go home to a house, but you can't? Reps Bush and AOC outside Speaker's office now. We don't need to go anywhere until we get this done for our communities. People are counting us, Bush says, recounting when she and her children were homeless and slept in her car. Democrats are furious with White House for putting them on the last minute. Everyone knew this was coming, AOC says, noting court order White House sighting came weeks ago. However, we know that this isn't exactly true. We know that this was coming, and the fact that I think it was really by design to have progressives like AOC and Cori Bush make a last-second push for this extension, because when it comes down to it, this really should have been done days or even weeks beforehand. The fact that this statement came out just yesterday is unacceptable, AOC says, but also criticizes Dems, saying fellow members threatening to go on vacation is also unacceptable. No matter whose fault it is, the fact of the matter is what was promised to the people has not been given. And in that moment, what wasn't mentioned was the fact that AOC... Oh. Thanks for the follow, M. Fury. You late? What wasn't mentioned in that was the fact that Cori Bush and AOC actually ran to the House floor to try to make this last-second effort to force a vote. But then what you saw was some of the more conservative Democrats had resistance to this because they don't give a fuck about you. They just wanted to hurry up, go on their fucking vacation, and enjoy their lives, while several people are now on the verge of being homeless. That's what they were really about. Now, once again, this is proof that they knew of this sooner than just this past Friday. In this photo here, you're going to see in June, when CDC extended the eviction moratorium until July 31st, the Supreme Court ruling stated that clear and specific congressional authorization via new legislation would be necessary for the CDC to extend the moratorium past July 31st. Here's the problem you're seeing right now. They're about to put so many people back out into the streets when COVID cases are spiking once again. But what you're noticing is that the Biden administration wasn't truly concerned about defeating COVID. What they really want, what that administration really wanted to do was just get people vaccinated and to move on to getting people back to work and pleasing the capitalist in charge by making the system run as is. And if they really took serious what is going on in this moment, they would have extended this easily. And guess what? Just demanding people to get vaccinated is not the way to provide a adequate solution to this situation right now. Next, we go to Chuck Modi. He's been all over this situation over the weekend, where we'll bring you into this next step of action, which, by the way, Cori Bush has decided to camp out on the Capitol steps. And this is important because to keep in mind what this is doing. This, even though it's easy to say that all protest is performative, and sometimes when we say that, that term a bit too loosely, because there's a lot of moments in this politics at the federal level where we can marginalize it as performative political theater. But I'm going to say that there is a difference here between what I call usual performative theater in DC compared to this. Even though, yes, this is marginally better than not doing anything at all, the fact that you wait until the day before the eviction moratorium is set to end is just not good enough. Still better than nothing, but a failure in the fact that this should have started sooner. And this is a performative action, in my opinion, that does not have a obvious payoff in sight. So what I mean by that is, when you watch wrestling, there's plenty of storylines and angles where, especially the more important ones, where you will know that there's a clear build towards an actual payoff. Then you've got like a mid-card wrestler who is kind of stuck, not being able to find a key angle to work on. And what you'll see is they often just, some of them get the opportunity to just beat up on lower card uh, guys with no real payoff or real push towards anything. What I should say is progression towards anything better than what currently exists. And I think that even though there is some the raise of awareness is happening a bit, but what I'm not seeing is a progression or a big build up towards an ultimate solution. And I can clearly see that it's pretty easy to, in other situations, to point out a solution that most of the time these politicians just refuse to take the next step and follow through. And this is another case, and this is a different case because I just see this heading to a dead end. I would like to see it build up into something more, like for example, such as canceling the debt or a further extension on this eviction moratorium, even though it is another incremental measure. Other ideas could be real housing reform. Because what you're going to see over the next few weeks is like a real estate housing sharks like BlackRock. What they're going to do is steal up all the houses and ensure that they'll no longer be affordable. And I'm just not sure that the progressives and the squad members are asking high enough. I feel like they're just sticking to the same incrementalism and asking for more of the can kicking down the road when there's much more systemic solutions of action that need to be taken to ensure that this isn't just going to happen in like September, October, November, December. And as you can see, in the back of this photo is Nick Brana of the People's Party. And since he has inserted himself into this by being involved, I will get into him a bit later. First off, credit to Max Blumenthal of the Gray Zone for getting involved in providing some good on-the-ground coverage here that is critical to challenge the squad in this situation. And let's watch this video.
That's where we are. And I heard, like last night, there was a lot less people. It's great to see so many more people. But I heard there was an intense debate about the role of the squad and why the squad didn't leverage its vote for the speaker for Medicare for all vote, and why the squad, I mean, with the margin so narrow in Congress, why the squad didn't leverage its vote on the stimulus to get a $15 minimum wage. What?
No. So, first, one thing that was said last night, which is something that's very true, and I wish we would have talked about that this was where your conversation was going, because we're talking about the rally for tonight, and I really would love to keep the conversation on what's happening.
I feel like it's all related to healthcare and the...
It absolutely is, but this is the thing. What was said last night is that this bill, Medicare for All, is not, no, there's no person on the squad whose bill that is. That is Bernie Sanders' bill in the Senate. It is Pamela Jayapal's bill in the House. It is not our bill. We cannot make that bill come to the floor. There is nothing that we can do legally to get the bill to the floor. We have
Well, Pelosi could have brought the bill to the floor.
We're good here, thank you.
Well, what? Well,
I'm sorry, man.
Well,
we're fine at this.
why can't she answer the question?
We're here to talk about the eviction.
But I feel like it's all about healthcare.
Thank you.
Really appreciate
Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
That's about the motion.
Well, why is that? I can't ask about Medicare for all.
The congresswoman has slept 1 hour. She's done a lot of labor.
I'm trying to get people out here too. I'm trying to do the same thing you all are doing. But why can't she could just answer it and then I go away? I'm not trying to like attack her or anything. I'm not trying to smear her.
We're happy to give you a contact and you can reach
But
out.
why is that issue the Medicare for all vote so like she was wrapping up her? But she was wrapping up her. I know she was wrapping up her answer. Then I was going to say thank you. Everybody come out.
I appreciate
But why
that.
didn't you let her just wrap up her
I
answer?
really appreciate you. We're happy to give you a contact and you can reach out. Thanks.
All right, thanks.
Such bullshit. This type of deflection and refusing to answer to many of the activists that helped representatives like Cori Bush, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, Jamal Bowman, Rep. Rashida Tlaib, all get elected. And what you're going to see here is, over this past week, Cori Bush has gotten quite exceptional at gaslighting the fuck out of people. This deflection is about how they aren't able to get this Medicare for all to a floor vote. And that right there is why they should have extracted real concessions from Nancy Pelosi if they are unable to, if what she is saying is really true about not being able to push Medicare for all to a floor vote. And if that is really true, why do these progressives not take that bill, make a couple small tweaks to it, that way it really is their own, in order to bring it up to the floor on their own? That's the type of logic that I don't get here. And the most annoying part is these people who came in and blocked Cori Bush from finishing her answer. They're really censoring any type of talk about anything that isn't the homeless crisis. She even gave slight acknowledgement about how Medicare for all is connected to this issue. But no, these activists are, but these people are now full out protecting the squad from answering tough questions from independent journalists like Max Blumenthal. Frank Analysis also went down there, besides Chuck Modi. And it's a major problem when politicians refuse to answer to the people, and not just the easy mainstream softball questions. And I'm going to get into why them doing the shut up and trust the plan and not be as transparent as they could possibly be is more infuriating than anything than just saying that they do not agree with forced to vote tactics that we've been advocating for since late December. And I do not give a fuck if you're still complaining about the fact that this is 7 months old. I say this often. Force the vote will be relevant until January 2023. That means they can flip that switch at any fucking time and start to fight for this shit. Support doesn't mean anything. Actual fight matters. And we've got this person, Kristen Mink, coming to the defense of the squad with bullshit identity politics. And she tried to attack Max Blumenthal, and we know that it was Nick Brana who probably got into a lengthy discussion with some of these squad members who were there overnight. And she made a thread up, so let's tear down this. No, I was there, and this framing is completely wrong and disingenuous. Friday night, there was a guy who identified himself as from the People's Party, which would be Nick Brana. Ilhan Omar chatted with him for a long while and went to follow him on Twitter. Then she found offensive memes about the squad. And before I go further, this is going to take me into one of the most annoying arguments that you hear from some of these independent left personalities like Carl Kulinski, Jordan Sheridan, and Jen Dyes, saying that these people, you cannot be mean to these people if they want to fight for you. Which is what this woman said in this first tweet here: disingenuous. If I, at my job, refuse to do it because of some customer being mean to me, I would be fired. Guess what? If the small amount of progressives who campaigned on bringing the ruckus to DC change their mind and decide not to fight for us in the way that we deem correct, we absolutely deserve to fire their asses and get someone else in who will follow through on fighting on their platform. And if regular people get fired because if for some reason they refuse to do their job because of customers being mean to them, then that should apply to your politicians as well. In addition to that, when they do just the bare minimum of a tiny thing right, they absolutely do not deserve miles and miles of praise for doing such bare minimum. It's the absolute bullshit when these people say you have to be nice to your politicians in order for them to get things done, while speaking both sides talk where they still say you have to pressure your politicians. It is a faulty argument on its head. And if they let their angry supporters, who are absolutely, completely justified in their anger at the fact they aren't showing us tangible results of fight, then they weren't really about doing things like Medicare for all, increase minimum wage, because $15 is not good enough anymore. If we aren't at least asking for $20 to $25 an hour, then we're not serious about shifting the Overton window in the positive direction. She asked him to explain, and he launched into a rant about their failures to push Medicare for all. In a long hour, seemed like an intimate conversation, the members listened with incredible patience despite the guy's dismissive, disrespectful tone and words. And I'm going to say this once again. If they let us in, if they were more transparent about the reasons that they disagreed with our strategy, then you wouldn't see, at least you would tone down the anger a bit that people on the left rightfully have when they're not doing anywhere near enough to provide a tangible change to please the left. Rep. Omar Presley Bush responded to his questions, thoughtfully detailing dedicated years-long efforts to push for Medicare for all, including local organizing, as well as whipping votes, why they're personally invested in the situation. Alright, the problem is a lot of the stuff that they probably told Nick Barana is not getting through to the people. And yes, even Nick Barana himself isn't fully revealing the details of what was said in this long conversation. They also explain why pushing them to get the bill to the floor makes no strategic procedural sense. Once again, that members can't bring bills they didn't write to the floor. And why I said that. If that's the case, why not just craft your own bill with a couple small tweaks and to make that possible? And if someone could explain why that wouldn't be legal or not, I would appreciate that knowledge. But for now, I'm going to say the case, just make a Medicare for all bill on your own with a couple of tweaks. That way it's not like a complete copy of someone else's bill. It failed, which is why the bill's authors aren't forcing you to vote now. We're gaining votes. Work on that. No, that's why we want this vote done, is because quietly organizing isn't good enough to do this. We need to not only force the vote on Medicare for all, we need to constantly do it. If it takes we need to be making several attempts at this, because even though argument that anti-force the vote people like to make was, well, mainstream media is only going to work against it. So what? Who gives a fuck? We can't just sit back and wait years and years down the line for the ideal opportunity to pass Medicare for all. Because guess what? Waiting every 2 to 4 years to add 2 to 4 more progressives isn't going to cut it. Especially when down the line you're going to lose some of these progressives, and not only are they going to become full-fledged liberals, they're going to be much closer to a Nancy Pelosi by the time you get what you think is enough support for the Medicare for All bill. Also, I watched Frank Analysis stream last night at the steps of the Capitol, which was roughly about 20 to 30 people, and he got into a long discussion with someone who wasn't for the idea of force the vote. And his argument that he liked to break out was fear-mongering over the disingenuous yes vote. And to me, the disingenuous yes vote does not matter. And the fact is, what I want is a big of a sample size as possible of people who will vote yes. So if you vote 6 times yes, that matters. The person who also votes no 6 times is important and relevant to the sample size as well, just as the person who may vote yes or no 4 out of 6 times. And even if someone disingenuously votes yes, guess what? Even though there are a lot of people who are one-issue voters, that yes vote is not going to excuse you in a future primary if you're bad on all the other issues. So let's not do this. We need to build as big of a sample size as possible when it comes to force the vote. And it's only going to hurt worse when you finally think you have the votes needed to pass Medicare for all. Then you have like 5 to 10 of those sponsors, when you think you finally have the majority, turn on the bill. I'd rather have that pain sooner and more frequently rather than push that pain of a failure of a vote further down the line. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and I'd rather go 0 for 10 when it's clear that we don't have the momentum all at once, as opposed to going 0 for 1 when you think you finally have the numbers in your favor. And that will always be what I want. And I'd rather go backwards, putting up a full fight, instead of being stagnant or being pushed backwards by inaction. And I do not have, when you're truly desperate, you don't care if you fight and you fail. When you have the privilege to wait for this to happen, then you're not going to understand the gravity of the situation. And that's what I get on exposing the class divide that you have on the left. One member asked the guy, why doesn't their group target Bernie, someone who could push the bill to the floor with their ass in vitriol? The guy refused to answer. He didn't answer any of their questions. Those went back to his same tired, illogical accusations. I think I got into this Friday. We don't believe Bernie Sanders is the fighter for us right now. He may selectively put up a bit of a fight on occasion, but I'm sure if people believe that Bernie Sanders would fight for this, then more people would ask him. But given the makeup of the Senate, there's really only one true progressive in Bernie Sanders and two half progressives in Ed Markey and Elizabeth Warren. Tell me why that would make sense when we know that it's a worst battle in the Senate, while the progressives have the margins if they actually use their vote as a block. The squad plus their other neighboring progressives like Pramila Jayapal, Ro Khanna, Mark McCann, Katie Porter, and there's a couple more, but those are the type of people who could build that 12 to 15 member block that is needed. And that brings me on to the other bad argument. It's just 6 people. They don't have that much power. It's not really 6 people. If the rest of the people in the House who call themselves progressive, who actually do support the squad platform in addition to them, it'd be a much bigger, impactful voting bloc. And I'm going to say once again, the failure is much more annoying in the situation than anything else. The conventional pattern, Guy Lob's accusatory question, why didn't you do XYZ? Members responded with detailed info. Guy Lob's same accusatory question as if nothing was said. It was ridiculous, and distracted from the urgent issue we were there for. If you don't get how this all ties together, then fuck out of here, because everything is relevant. Housing, healthcare, wages, jobs. This type of censoring bullshit was infuriating as hell. And if the members responded in the same way that they often do on mainstream media, I would definitely continue to pile on because they deserve to get piled on until they bring the right type of transparency to this, not repeatedly dodge and deflect. Because I do imagine they could still say a bunch of nothing even with fake detailed answers. And if they can answer him the same way they did Max Blumenthal, I would understandably be continue on in the way that she said Nick Brana did. Then here's the identity politics bullshit. Hounding these same women of color about Medicare for all doesn't make strategic sense. Even if you think forcing a vote now is a good move, they aren't the bill's authors. They aren't the ones in the building with the most influence with Pelosi to get the bill to the floor. Far from it. Alright. Many of the people who are continuously trying to demand the squad to do more than they are doing now would be consistent on this. The squad could be 6 balding white men and we would still demand the same fucking thing from them. This isn't about identity. This is about policy. And they aren't being transparent enough here. These half or partial truths just aren't going to cut it. Why is it that these women who get constant death threats as they push Medicare for all and other progressive causes more than anyone else are the ones who receive all the blame, hate, and vitriol? The only reason can be saying the far right targets them. Racism is sexism. Bullshit. Once again, this is about policy. These are liberal lines of attack. And this brings me into the faulty, reverse, illogical arguments that they like to bring. That it doesn't make sense to pressure the people who support it most. Wrong. And they always tell you that you should put your energy into like the corporate Democrats, or some of them move it even further to focusing on Republicans. Do they not get how counterproductive that is? Because these corporate ghouls do not pay attention to us. The people who have the opportunity to move these people are the progressives, are the squad. But guess what? Why we're so frustrated here is because they constantly ignore us, gaslight us, tell us to shut up and trust the plan, and that's not gonna help people trust you and maintain your support. And the annoying part is breaking out a horseshoe argument that the far left horseshoe theory bullshit. No. I'm going to move that horseshoe. It's not the far left and the far right. That horseshoe is liberals and the far right. And your identity politics shield isn't going to work here. You can continue to try to smear and slander with misogynistic arguments, but it doesn't work on principled people. And it's the type of thing that liberals like to do in defense of not doing anything. The far left and the far right are not alike. You can point at both sides like a idiot liberal, but it just isn't fucking true. One side wants healthcare, wages, workers to own the mean of production, liberation for black lives and people of color, which, by the way, includes reparations. The other side wants nationalism. The two things aren't alike. Stop it. Rep Omar pulled up one of the memes on the guy's timeline, used it mock AOC, and asked him about it. He denied it was racist, sexist, offensive. Definitely was. He chuckled about it, said it's just a meme that made it all crystal clear. I do not have the meme, so I can't truly judge the accuracy of that statement. But if you're going to get upset as a politician over frustration that people have not living up to your campaign promises, then you're not truly for getting it done if you let frustration of the people who supposedly you're fighting for change your mind on doing so. This guy had an opportunity to have a legitimate conversation about how to further goals he ostensibly shares with members. It was small for a group of us for hours. They were engaged in trying to make it productive, but he honestly just bullied him. That's not organizing. And based on the framing, which, by the way, is far more disingenuous than the people who are challenging the squad to defend their inactions, by the way. And if you're going to call challenging their arguments bullying, then that's just soft. Remember, politicians are not our friends. They deserve to be challenged relentlessly if they're not following through with us. It took basically everyone at the Capitol steps Friday night be like, come on, dude, just stop. It's 2 a.m. Asked and answered. Repeatedly to get him to stop pointlessly haranguing the members. From that I've learned what I need to know about this movement. And yeah, what that tells me is a lot of these people who come out to the Capitol, especially when squad members make the convenient rallying cries, and that's when they tend to get most people, are genuinely the ones who are there who still have this belief in the squad. But then once those people leave and things wind down, you start to see a bit more people there who are far more critical of the squad. and aren't willing to take everything that they hear straight from them at the value of what they offer, and are willing to question everything that comes out. And here's the last thing Mink says. Turning off notifications. Here's what we know. The squad's done and still do a lot more to move Medicare for All towards passage, just not the thing you wish they had. And I'm going to continuously disagree with that until they prove otherwise. What I do know is they're squandering opportunities to build new and further energy towards building towards that goal. If you're going to go along, especially with all the other inaction that has taken place during these first few months of the Biden administration, you're just going to ensure there's no chance of anything ever happening, because we're heading towards Republican rule because of how much Democrats are dropping the ball on getting anything notable done for their people. They're the least strategic people to target if your actual goal is to bring it to the floor. Once again, it's that reversed illogical logic which makes no sense on face value. Remember, FDR would have not done any populist policy if he hadn't been pressured by his supporters. And policy concedes nothing without demand. It's the same thing. The people who claim to support it most are always going to be the most strategic people to start with first. Anyone who tells you otherwise is misguiding you in the wrong direction. And unfortunately, your average vote blue, no matter who are liberal, has been sucked up into that mindset for years and years and years, where they only have outrage towards any Republican, but they stay mum and completely silent on even the worst of their Democrats. Yeah, let's bring this photo up to see what. Lastly, do not listen to her. You're not going to get Medicare for all by targeting people who say they're never going to support it. In fact, you're better off. They're going to be more moved by direct action anyway than the direct target and pressuring. And guess what? This moment could lead to direct action if people had more faith and trust that this was going to lead to something. This is Andrew Rochford, host of the Rochford Files, and we've been over an hour into this big discussion about this eviction moratorium and how it all connects to force the vote, especially on other related issues to housing like Medicare for all, wages, jobs, and many of the other important things of the left platform.
Mama forgot that. Mama waved the flag. It's all about ego. Finish that out on it. Mama is talking right. I'm proud to protect. America means protecting the meek and the weak from being exploited, enslaved, victimized, over their time. It's doing to do so.
Hey, OC, is it okay if I get like a question or two? Question two, what's the next steps? What are you guys going to do to pressure your colleagues? How are you going to pressure your colleagues? Why are you guys doing this last minute? Why weren't you guys doing this for months? That's it! So you just show up for a photo op and that's it! You're not actually going to fight in Congress! No, what is she going to do? You want to talk about it here? We can discuss right here very civilly. I'm completely independent.
What I know about Frank Analysis is he's very even keel and level-headed. And this moment by AOC deciding to walk away and refuse to ask questions, it even makes the most level-headed people that you see, like Franco, get really frustrated. And even though I'm normally more level-headed as well, these past couple of weeks have definitely upped my tone of frustration and anger here. And it brings me to the point I touched on a bit, is the fact that most of these squad members are only coming around to the steps when it's comfortable. You know, when they got the big, in the middle of the day, when they get the peak crowd at the Capitol, that's when they're out there. For the people who have solid, concrete trust in the squad and are going to continuously hold their hope that they'll continue to fight for them and do more. But no, that's not going to be good enough. More has to be done. In my opinion. And what I'm seeing take effect right now is pretty much everyone outside of Cori Bush is hanging around there when it's convenient, when it's comfortable, when independent journalists like Max Blumenthal, Frank Analysis, Kobe Azule, when those independent journalists aren't around to challenge them, that's when they're comfortable being around the Capitol steps. But when they're there, they're gonna take cover and protection with security, staffers to protect them, and continuously tell the activists effectively to fuck off with any real challenging questions. And last night on Frank Analysis stream, in the time that he was down at the Capitol steps, Cori Bush was parked was right by there. While she may have caught up on sleep, which, okay, not gonna dock much on that, but what was probably a certain tactic was there was no way she was going to come out of that car until she knew that independent journalists who were there weren't going to question her. Once that crowd was just down to people who were just going to be in solidarity with and trust her, those are the moments when they're around. But not so much when you need them to be. And unfortunately, a negative downside of this tactic is it's only going to cause people false hope and go down into the wrong direction, which is continuing to participate in this two-party system, even for progressives. Because as long as we continue to participate in their game, they're going to continue to the system is going to continuously take these progressives and turn them into kid glove fighters or non-fighters, fighting with kid gloves at best. And that's what the people are frustrated about right now is they give us a kid glove type of strategy when we need to be throwing every single thing at the wall and see what sticks. They just flat out aren't doing that. We can get back to that organizing argument, but no reasonable supporter of force the vote is trying to discount saying that organizing doesn't matter. We know it does. We also know that organizing doesn't have as strong of an impact as these people like to say it does. And that they need to leverage their name, their brand, and do it for the power of good. And that even means forcing mainstream attention when you fail to get things done. And what I mean by that is, instead of letting mainstream media go silent and largely ignore the first or even second failed vote for Medicare for all, not only that, but let them use it as a opportunity to frame why it's a failure. We've got to see these progressives use it as a chance to challenge those narratives and build up for the next fight. Because guess what? If we truly saw these people fighting for us, you know what would happen even if they failed? Because I'm not ruling out that they couldn't possibly fail. That's gonna galvanize the people. And if you really did prove capable to making a good fight within the Democratic Party, you're going to see the people back you up. And that means instead of getting 2 to 4 progressives in each election cycle, you may see that turn into a much larger number. But your inaction as squad members and your fellow progressives are showing that the people are just going to turn to an alternative strategy, which at this point is just purely going outside of the Democratic Party. Let's get into the statement from Nancy Pelosi, because even though trying to pressure Nancy Pelosi is not going to work for the people, because she's a ratio queen on Twitter, and that doesn't change anything. And that's why we need the people who have the standing to be capable of challenging Nancy Pelosi need to do it. Because what we know as people is a lot of politicians are just going to flat out ignore us, no matter what we do, no matter how hard we try. However, if we take on tactics of direct action, such as a general strike, and ruin their capital, those are the things that are going to move them more than powerless people with ask that they could ignore pretty easily. Ensuring every American has a roof overhead is a value that unites the Democratic Party. That's why I led a relentless campaign to extend the CDC eviction moratorium. In an act of pure cruelty, Republicans blocked the measure, leaving children and families out on the streets. What a fucking liar. We know it was the conservative Democrats who flat out could not give a rat's ass about extending this eviction moratorium. Remember, Democrats right now control House, Senate, and have the Democratic president. And the minuscule things you get done happen with no Republican votes. Yet you pre-compromise your compromise in the name of the one-way street called bipartisanship. In the face of this partisan obstruction, wrong once again, this shit's bipartisan. House Democrats joined President in urging state and local governments to immediately disperse the $46.5 billion in emergency rental assistance approved by Democratic Congress so that many families can avoid eviction. And what I noticed is most states don't care about making sure people get that. In fact, they're holding on to it and hoarding it like rich assholes do. Democrats believe in safe and affordable housing for all. As the country recovers from the pandemic and we build back better, the Biden-Harris administration and House Democrats will continue to search for solutions to protect vulnerable renters from eviction during this crisis. So, all you're going to do is build BlackRock better? And create a situation where housing gets further and further out of control and make it that much more impossible to truly for homeless people to get back on their feet? Is that what you're really about? Gas Queen Nancy Pelosi? Because you left just like everyone else. You really don't care. And you're just spewing these fake-ass lies while you eat your top dollar ice cream from your multi-refrigerator kitchen. Being the most unpopular politician in the country. One of the true enemies of the people. Because for me, the far greater enemy is the one who lies to you and tries to say they're on your side, but turn on you, in any given notice. The wolf in sheep's clothing. The wolf is not my true enemy. I know where the wolf stands. I know that they're truly against us. But the wolf in sheep's clothing? They flat out lie, fill us with these platitudes and false hope. That's who I see my true enemy is. And I no longer fall for the smoke and mirrors that your average corporate establishment Democrat tries to put you through. And even the squad members contradict that. AOC did that in this clip with Jake Tapper.
So you've been warning that this eviction deadline was coming for weeks.
Yeah.
Democrats control the House. You guys control the Senate. You guys control the White House. Nothing aggressive was done by leadership until just a couple days ago. Who's to blame here?
Well, I think there's a couple of issues here. First of all, you are absolutely correct in that the House and House leadership had the opportunity to vote to extend the moratorium. And there were many, and there was frankly a handful of conservative Democrats in the House that threatened to get on planes rather than hold this vote. And we have to really just call a spade a spade. We cannot, in good faith, blame the Republican Party when House Democrats have a majority. Now, there is something to be said for the fact that this court order came down on the White House a month ago, and the White House waited until the day before the House adjourned to release a statement asking on Congress to extend the moratorium. This came after weeks. I sit on the Financial Services Committee, which has jurisdiction over housing. We had, the housing secretary there asking about the administration's stance. We asked the Biden administration about their stance, and they were not being really forthright about that advocacy and that request until the day before the House adjourned. And so the House was put into I believe, a needlessly difficult situation.
All right, she's trying to frame it as people the people that are at fault here, not being her. I think she's trying to convey that she was trying to do something sooner. But this is just an instance of the failure of following the proper channels. Because certain instances, it's just too easy to be ignored. And this is what that part of the statement sounds like to me, is AOC just got ignored in this instance when, guess what, if she days ago went to the bully pulpit, she could have really gotten something done. Sure, go ahead, Sunjin Woon Ugrits.
And it's not just me saying that. Financial Services Chairwoman Maxine Waters has made that very clear as well. And so there's a couple of contributing factors here. We have governors who are also not getting this emergency rental assistance out in time, which is forcing this extension, what we would like an extension of the moratorium. The fact of the matter is that the problem is here. The House should reconvene and call this vote and extend the moratorium. There's about 11 million people that are behind on their rent at risk of eviction. That's 1 out of every 6 renters in the United States.
Congress is out of town for the next 7 weeks. Speaker Pelosi made it clear in a letter to Democrats last night she's not calling the House back. The Senate's here because they got the infrastructure bill. And you heard Manchin say that he thinks that the moratorium should be extended so that these tens of billions of dollars can get out the door. What's your response?
Well, listen, the House adjourned technically for 7 weeks, but I want to be very clear that due to the ongoing negotiations with the bipartisan infrastructure bill, we were given very specific instructions that we are set to adjourn for 7 weeks, but every member of the House of Representatives is currently on a 24-hour callback notice in anticipation of that bipartisan infrastructure bill. So we all have left town with plans to come back within 24 hours if necessary. And I believe that the expiration of the eviction moratorium and having 11 million Americans, 1 out of every 6 renters at risk of being kicked out of their homes, is worth coming back and triggering that 24-hour notice. We cannot leave town without doing our job.
Can you explain to the American people why it is that these tens of billions of dollars that Congress has already passed to help renters, and also, you know, we shouldn't depict, and you're not, but landlords, some of them are small business people. They need the money too, so they can survive. These are not all just Jared Kushner slumlord types, right? And so this money's there. What's the holdup? Why can't it get out the door?
Well, you know, this money was handed over by Congress and the federal government to states and local municipalities to dole out. And what that means then is that each individual governor is responsible for establishing these programs. I think that in some states, governors and state administrations might be slow walking this process to get it out. In other states, the administrative burden of setting it up. But there are states and municipalities that have been getting it right. And we're at a point where, frankly, those state governments need to get it together. But we cannot kick people out of their homes when our end of the bargain has not been fulfilled. Out of the $46 billion that has been allocated, only $3 billion has gone out to help renters and small mom and pop landlords.
No, it's crazy.
I think the overall theme here is this oligarchy did this by design. The people at the top strung this out in a way where the few progressives would be in a position to where they could only do this on the last day. And the reason why I have a problem with that is because this is another example of why going along to get along, following the proper back channels is going to make the squad and other progressives look bad. This inactivity should have led one of them to sounding the alarm and calling on the bully pulpit much sooner. Because guess what? If Cori Bush decided 2 weeks ago that it was time to rally up the people to force action on this eviction moratorium, then guess what? They may not be out there right now. Instead, last day, they're allowed to come out looking good to the public. That way, this brand can continue to shepherd people back into the Democratic Party. Don't get me wrong, I don't question the genuineness of Cori Bush and her past experience with being homeless. It's just that they waited till too late to get this started, and the way that they've treated this experience, where they mainly get the photo ops and the good PR, is not good. That part is the bad part. And the true left isn't going to settle for that. Max Blumenthal went down to the Capitol in yesterday. And let's go through this thread. Jamal Bowman addressing the crowd at the U.S. Capitol demonstrating 4 eviction moratorium numbers static since last night. AOC reportedly to arrive later with a full bus of WFP members. Almost everyone here is within the squad's political network. I wonder if that will change. So, that's a good point that Max made, is that when these things peak in numbers, it's mainly just the network of people who are still engaged to the idea of adding progressives in, while people like myself are skeptical to that strategy, given how much they have regularly moved to the right. Interesting comments by Cori Bush to the crowd, urging them not to discuss issues other than the eviction moratorium, and asking supporters to interview, and if anyone does so, I wonder why she felt compelled to say that. And we know that because of journalists like Max Blumenthal, Frank Analysis, and any independent journalists there who would push these other important, relevant, related issues. And tell me how this is any different than AOC putting out a letter to her supporters trying to advocate for censorship of negative criticism. This is the same thing to me. And one of the parts that I'll continuously criticize these squad members on is when they advocate for censorship, because censoring the other related issues to homelessness is terrible. And it's the same, and this censorship is something that we cannot stand for. It is a garbage form of gatekeeping that they are doing at hand. And anyone who follows them in doing this is complicit. And we can't let that. And we can't stand for that. And here's a interesting quote from AOC. There are different theories of change, and some say if you're nice enough and gentle enough, you'll get what you want. We don't subscribe to that theory. You need confrontation. Ooh. This is the most contradicting quote to her gaslighting actions from the past several months. Remember, she tried to call criticisms for her lack of action on force the vote. She said it was violence. Yes, that's right. She said criticizing her on force the vote was violence. And that is bullshit, because it marginalizes real and actual violence. But the problem is, she spoke in front of a crowd who wouldn't push back against this top tier level gaslight. Because we've seen it throughout the year. She called Critics to her left, bad faith actors. But she in turn brings bad faith smears towards the people who aren't happy with what she is offering. She also has been on record of saying Joe Biden has exceeded expectations. Does that sound like someone to me who is really trying to confront people, except in a way that doesn't really move any of these issues forward? Because to me, if anything, is any progressive in House or Senate is really trying to be nice and gentle with Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi and Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema and anyone else who has emerged in this moment to turn on Democrats. Guess what happens when you're nice and gentle to those people? They're going to pull you right. And they're going to drag you. And guess what happens to these people in this photo who still believe in the squad's plan? And they're being nice and gentle to them? Guess what? They're being dragged to the right as well in the process. And people like us aren't going to let ourselves be dragged. There aren't enough of us on board, but we're trying to pull you back in the right direction. And lastly, AOC elicited the most applause when she told the crowd Pelosi had sent Biden a letter demanding the CDC issue an eviction moratorium, underscoring the importance of her and the squad's relationship with the speaker. So another sternly worded letter. Those work so well, don't they? You know, every time it feels like I can trace back to each sternly worded letter that progressives and squad members have put out. And I can see such tangible success. But I can also feel the tangible success get crumbled up by these people who see these letters, either throw them up in a ball or do what Nancy Pelosi did with Trump's speech at the State of the Union in a performative action that was supposed to elicit the babyface pop when she tore Trump's speech in half. Yes, those letters work so well. You know, typed or written communication is among the form of communication which is the easiest to ignore. Keep writing those letters. That's gonna really move the needle and pull them back in the right direction. Let's close off with this. This Primo Radical posted a video yesterday thanks to a clip from Diane Bullock. And this is about TYT. And the reason this relates to it is one of the consequences of putting people out of homes is cities like LA, which are now going to criminalize people for trying to camp wherever they can in the city. And if you think that LA is going to be the only city where this could happen, best believe other cities are quietly whipping up anti-camping ordinances in their city. And what's going to happen is they're going to put a shit ton more people into those jails. Those jails that top cop Kamala Harris said needed to have a certain amount of people to keep the private industry flowing as usual. But let's see what this shitty woman, Anna Kasparian, has to say.
I do think that there are progressives, I don't know if it's progressive policy, but progressives in places like California who have made terrible decisions. And so one of those terrible decisions is essentially doing away with anti-camping laws, right? Allowing people to camp out wherever they want, whenever they want. And if, like, we have a homeless problem in California. We have it all throughout the country, but it's particularly bad in California. And so the argument is, well, if there isn't public housing available for people, they should be allowed to camp out. Okay, but there's also a problem right now where there is public housing available and individuals will say, no, I don't want to take it. I don't want to follow the rules in the public housing. And so as a result, I would rather camp out. Progressive lawmakers are like, we should allow them to camp out. And you know what happens? Crime happens. Open air drug markets happen, and it's the truth. These are the facts of the matter. In fact, it was addressed in this Daily Beast article, and honestly, it was cathartic to read it because everyone denies that this is happening.
Fuck you, Anna Kasparian. This is what happens when you let corporate money dispurify a network like TYT. If you've been following the Jimmy Dore TYT fallout, which has involved Aaron Mate and Rania Halleck, and these fucking smear merchants, her and Cenk Uygur, you'll know that these people are now a full-fledged enemy of anything left-wing these days. And even though this video may be slightly dated, what I do know is those so-called housing shelters, they're over capacity right now. They do not have the ability to shelter every single person that's out there. Not only that, but when you add even more people, what you're going to create is a big, massive influx of people into prisons all over California and so many other cities, as I'm sure they're going to be on the hunt to criminalize homelessness in the same way that Los Angeles did last week. And these are right in line with right-wing talking points she broke out. Guess what? These homes, these shelters, I should say, they aren't fully conductive to allowing people to get back on their feet. I know that there's restrictions in place that make people not want to be part of them. And if you really want people back on their feet, they gotta have the same type of freedom that they have when they're in their home. And the more people you force to be out in the streets by these shelter restrictions, the more you're adding to the drug culture. These politicians at the local level can easily put the right policy in place to counteract the culture of crime and drugs. But when you advocate for the status quo, like Anna Kasparian is doing, all that her argument is doing is feeding even more towards making sure more of this happens. And this is type of disingenuous right-wing talking points that are only going to contribute to making this homeless situation worse, as opposed to advocating for the right thing. The same type of rooming that truly allows them to get back on their feet. Being in a restrictive shelter is not going to work for everyone. And what you're going to see as the numbers accumulate from these people being kicked out is there isn't going to be enough shelters to support all the people. So there's plenty of, this is multi-pronged, solutions need to take place. We need to not only extend the eviction moratorium, we need to, even with as bad as some landlords are for being mad about being disaffected capitalists, complaining about how people can't pay them, they need to be paid that way. The people aren't on the hook for several months of back pay. So cancel the renter debt, reimburse. The government should be paying the landlords, not the people. Those are the last people who should be on the hook to fix this crisis that is unfolding under us. Lastly, this is a great moment to ask for some serious housing reform in the United States. The squad members have a chance to ask for more. But what I feel is they're making their ask really small, and they're really just kicking the can down the road on this. They could be doing so much more. They could be asking for so much more, so I'm waiting to see what that would be. I'm going to continue to be highly critical of this because, as I said, we always got to demand more until they meet our demands. If they somehow manage to pull something miraculously off over the course of the coming hours and days, I will be glad to adjust my criticisms and give proper but not overly praise them, because the last thing we should be doing is overly praising them, because by design we need to make sure that they continuously keep this going for us. If we let up in any way, shape, or form, then in the process they're going to let up as well. But I am not a nihilistic hack. I will be glad to. I'm always prepared to adjust to the moment. Fortunately, these progressives aren't giving me much to change my mind over or curb my criticisms about. Once the action comes, I'll be perfectly glad to do that. That will be all for today's episode of the Rochford Files with your host, Andrew Rochford. And I'd like to thank the new followers I got today. If anyone else would like to give a follow, I would appreciate that as well. I would also like to say that I may possibly come back on later tonight to discuss what happens in the first few hours of NBA free agency, as we're a little over an hour away from that officially starting. And I may do that multiple times this week to discuss the transactions that happen in NBA free agency. Please go subscribe to the Rochford Files on YouTube and help. I'd like to thank a couple of new subscribers I got over the weekend after uploading my Bernie Sanders video. And I hope to gain some more subscribers as well. I'm also going to work on trying to ask a couple guests on the show this week. In fact, I'll probably start the process of that just after I end this stream. Please follow me on Twitter at NugLikeComrade at the bottom of the screen if you see that. But for those listening, it's NUGGLAFE Conrad, and also the Rochford Files Twitter page, A Rochford Files. So with that being said, look out for me possibly later tonight to discuss the first moves of NBA free agency, and I will be back with further developments on this eviction crisis on Wednesday. With that being said, this is Andrew Rochford saying goodbye.